Welcome to JavaScript Jam Live. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be a little bit of open mic today. We're going to talk about CWV, Core Web Vitals, TypeSafe, React, Query, HTML superpowers, and anything else that's on topic is to go. JavaScript Jam, web development. We talk about it all. Yes, indeed. In fact, if you're a beginner or you're seasoned and you've been doing this for quite some time, it doesn't matter. We love to hear from everybody. So excited for today. I have with me here a co-host Anthony and a regular, you could even call him a co-host, speaker Daniel as well. Super excited for everybody in the room.
I feel like we were doing a Where's Waldo of Anthony.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm alive. Risen from the dead.
He's good to go. That's awesome. Yeah, I got in touch with him. So I'm super excited for Anthony to be here and really excited, yes, for our talk period. With that being said, we do this every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Like I was saying, let's have a good time. Let's do this. Let's talk about what's on topic. And if you haven't signed up for our newsletter yet, just go to javascriptjam.com, sign up, and that way you'll get the deets on everything that's going on in JavaScript and the web development world. The latest and greatest news, for sure. In fact, let me share the latest episode, the latest newsletter iteration that was written by our dear Anthony, really quite well, actually. And I'll post that in the comments on this thread of this live. So with that, Anthony, what's up, brother? How are you? Daniel, how are you? Hey, Jen, how are you? Welcome to the room.
Oh, I'm doing all right.
Good.
Eating some bread. That's always nice.
Oh, yes. Bread is good.
How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Doing wonderful. I should be eating, but I'm not. I don't think I've had lunch yet. Looking forward to it. So yeah, I am Scott Steinlogie. I am the technical community manager here at Edgio. Anthony, if you want to introduce yourself, feel free. I can do it for you though. If you want.
My name is Anthony Campolo. I am a developer advocate at Edgio, and I also host JSJam.
Yes.
And I'm on the Redwood team.
True that. Yeah. If you haven't checked out JSJam, please check out that podcast as well. They have some awesome hitters on there. Some really influential people in the technology space world. In fact, they were nominated for GME this past year, which is really cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is awesome. All right. So, shall we get to the topics here? Ishan will not be joining us today. He's actually out of the office for today, but he will be rejoining next week. All right. Let's get this newsletter here up and loaded. JavaScriptJam.com. And at JavaScriptJam.com, you can click on Newsletter Archive. Check that out, folks. And then you just click. And let's see. Yeah, here it is. Boom. And go to Twitter. You know what's interesting on desktop? It's kind of hard to find the space.
What's most interesting about desktop is the fact that I can't talk when I'm on desktop.
That's true. That's so true. Oh, gosh.
Still drives me nuts. And the fact that I have to take out my phone is ridiculous.
Yeah, especially as a developer, right? A lot of developers are just rather do things on their PCs, computers, desktops, whatever. You name it. Yeah. And this is a big world for developers, right? Twitter.
Right.
Yeah.
Know your audience. Come on, Musk.
Yep. Come on, bro. Absolutely. All right. Now let me grab this link here. And there it is. Copy it. Go back to Twitter. Comment. Newsletter. There we go. Paste. It's in there, folks. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this, obviously, into header of our space here. Boom. It's in the header. All right. That only took forever. You can click on that and go to the newsletter there.
So I see this at TypeSafe React Query. Did this just come out?
Yeah, maybe like a week or two ago.
What's your first thoughts on it?
TRPCs eating the world?
I don't know. It's a TRPC is pretty cool. I guess I'm just not seeing the huge value of it. I get it. I don't know. I'm just not as hyped about it as everybody else.
Yeah, I wasn't really on the TypeScript train at all, or like type safety train for a while. I think that the way that you can do it with like end-to-end type safety is pretty sweet. So I understand why people are excited about it, especially since I was like in the GraphQL world forever and like kind of oblivious to the fact that was something I even had that others didn't for the longest time. And so I think that's partially what it is. Some people have already had this and just like take it for granted, whereas others are getting it for the first time and are very excited about it. But I think the fact that it's in React Query now, which has been like what TRPC has been using very heavily for its React-based projects, it just shows how that influences leading into other projects.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Like I have never been on the TypeScript train, but the last 3 weeks, like I've just like embraced it. Like I'm just addicted to Zod, and I mean everything about it. I just really enjoyed it. But I've lived in static languages most of my life, or not highly typed languages most of my life, so it wasn't that big of a change for me. But I really like the flexibility of it, and I hadn't when hooks came out, query wasn't around, so I didn't really get the experience query. But now that diving back into the ecosystem, React Query is probably one of my favorite libraries that exist. It just eliminates so many issues that you normally run into with basic patterns. And knowing that it's type safe now, that just makes life so much easier.
Yeah, and I had been hearing about React Query for the longest time and didn't really use it until, let's see, technically I'm still not really using it that much, but I remember Blitz was probably the first time I'd ever heard of it, is when Blitz was using it. And then there's this long conversation about whether Redwood should use it instead of Apollo. And then we made it swappable so you could use it if you wanted to. So it's already embedded in a lot of frameworks, I think, that a lot of people don't even realize.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's funny, but I hadn't given it a chance, and I was sitting there like writing my own hooks. There has to be something easier. This is just such a pain now. Like I'm like that negative Nancy is still talking about class components. That's like the golden era of React. Like I think that's just because that was when I mostly focused on front end, was when class was dominant, and I'm so used to React being class based that shift is. It's like, why am I even using React? It just feels so different. It doesn't even feel like React like it used to anymore. But I'm getting adjusted to it now, so it's enjoyable. And same thing about GraphQL. I mean, I was big on the GraphQL train for a long time, too.
Awesome. Yes. Type safe, React Query. That's the conversation that's happening here. Hey, Bro Nifty, what's up, bro? Long time no see. Not long time no see. You were here a couple weeks ago. How's it going, dude? One of the usuals, one of the regulars. David, the dev. How you doing, sir? What's up? The Moran stack programmer. How are you? Anything you want to talk about with TypeSafe and React Query? By the way, for those who are just joining us that haven't joined us before, maybe you have. But either way, we'd love to hear from everybody. Right? Whether you're a beginner, whether you've been doing this for a very long time, we like to hear from everybody. Feel free to request to come up. Just Bro Nifty did. We brought him up. And state an opinion, fact, question, comment, whatever. We'd love to hear it. Bro Nifty, what's up, dude?
I came here to spit facts and chew bubblegum. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Oh, man, we're spitting facts. Hey, bro.
Hey, what's up? I'm so excited that Anthony's working there now, too, and you guys are there. Everybody's here now. And then, yeah, that was great with Daniel. Although I can't really relate, Daniel, as to the classes. I did not enjoy binding the interface to a class with this keyword and the explicitly binding it. I feel like the hooks are really a nice way of functional component returning JSX and the hooks implicitly hooking into the lifecycle methods, rather than like creating a class which then gets rendered and explicitly calling the lifecycle methods inside the class, creating explicit state inside with a constructor and all those types of things. I felt like it's really overkill.
I agree with you. I think it's, from my perspective, like I learned React like when I first touched it, Flux wasn't even out. I came up with it during that period of time where it was habitual. Like class components was React. Like that's all there was to it. So I think when you just had done it for so long, and it really was like my real big first front end experience outside of Rails, like it's second nature. It took me a while to get adjusted to hooks. I enjoy them now. I definitely prefer them. It's much less code. It's more optimal. I think it was just getting used to the patterns and how exactly I was addicted to use effect for 2 weeks. And then I just realized it's just garbage. Learning all the different patterns now and how to work around them and understanding just how it works today versus how it worked 6 years ago. But now that I've adjusted to it and switched over to TypeScript mostly, it's a very enjoyable experience. I will say that class-based with TypeScript was terrible. It just wasn't even, I feel like it wasn't even functional. Whereas like now it feels like TypeScript and React are one, like you want to use TypeScript and React. Like it just feels natural.
Would you agree? I don't know where we are on the use effect thing, but would you agree that use effect's job is to call a function without requiring user input? So like automatically either when it starts up or when an array and its dependency array, when a variable and dependency array changes.
Yeah, honestly, like, so if I were to use it, that's the context that I could use it in. It's pretty much just like when you use component did mount or did update. That would be the same exact scenarios that you would use both of them in. But like for me personally, I've made it an effort to not use it at all if I can help it, unless it's to initialize. I'm mostly focused on using callback, memo. I'm really trying to stay as much as I can away from use effect. And of course now I'm messing more with queries, so it's eliminating the conversation altogether. But I was doing like a hefty amount of like creating my own components because of it, because I just would have issues with the use effect. And let's say I'm working with Firebase. I didn't want to work with a constant repeating pattern. So it just ended up being a joint hook between two different lifecycle methods and how the hooks with the actual Firebase components would also work. And I felt it almost like, why use this particular function? It's so dangerous. Like it killed performance constantly for me.
Cool. I don't have much else to say off of that. I guess I agree.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was in a boot camp that was maybe, when I was in it, it was maybe 2 years after hooks had come out in React. So the shift had already happened where it was pretty clear it was the thing to do, but there was still like tons and tons of, even today, there's still tons and tons of code written in class components. And so they wanted to teach us how to do both, which wasn't really possible, I feel like, because we had to learn so much in the boot camp. And like, I think there's something to be said that even if class components are worse than hooks, at least back then there was one way to do it, and you could learn the way to do it, and it would work. Whereas in this world where we had to learn both, like you would learn a little bit of both, and then neither of them would work. So it was a kind of tough place to be. So I think that just having one way to do it would be really nice. And that's not really something we could ever have anymore, because now we're in this world where you can't get rid of the old class stuff, but everything you're writing in the new stuff.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Awesome. In the newsletter, there was also talk of HTML with superpowers. I'm not going in any order here, but I just thought it was a good hook. You would think HTML superpowers, HTML with JavaScript? Anyway, but yeah, it's more about web components, right? Which is pretty cool. Who is the author of this?
Yes, this is Dave Rupert. Have you ever listened to Shop Talk?
Oh, yes. I remember you telling me about that. Yep. And I have listened to a couple.
Yeah, great podcast. That's Chris Coyer, who most people know was the creator of CSS Tricks and also CodePen, and then Dave Rupert. And they've been doing that show for like over 10 years, I think, a really long time. So it's one of my favorites, weekly listen. And Dave is one of the more prominent web component advocates, and I think one of the more successful ones, in that he, I think, is able to speak to people who are using more modern component libraries. He's the big Vue guy. And yeah, he's been going on a lot of podcasts. He was on PodRocket last year, kind of talking about that. He feels like web components are ready for prime time, or they're at a place where You don't need to keep saying, I'll use web components when they're ready. He thinks they're ready. So I've been dipping my toe in every now and then. There's also all these web component frameworks now, like Enhance and others that we've talked about. So yeah, and I think that the more good resources for this stuff, the better, because web standards stuff can always be tricky. Sometimes all there really is the spec, and then you go to the spec, and the spec's really hard to read, and so you don't really know what to do. So yeah, I put this in here just because I know it's a common topic everyone's talking about, and there's not a lot of great resources out there. So hopefully this can help some people out.
Yeah, we're all about trying to provide resources for people and expanding different things. So I'm going to go ahead and check out more on webhooks and throw the link to that. It is in the newsletter, though. If you click in there, go to the newsletter, you can see it in there. But it wouldn't hurt to throw it here in the comment as well. So yeah, I'll pin it inside of our live here in our space. Super exciting stuff. I don't know if you want to dig into another topic from the newsletter there, Anthony, while I do that.
Yeah, what were some of the other ones on there?
Yeah, let's do the newsletter. I think book clubs and newsletters are perfect topics, like those kind of things. So yeah,
are you subscribed to the newsletter?
I will. If I'm not, I will be right now.
JavaScriptJam.com. On it, bro. Yeah. Yeah, you had the data binding in React with Josh Como, and there's talking about core web vitals, so top recommendations. Right, yeah.
Let's see. JavaScriptJam.com. There we go. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the core web vitals recommendations. This is really good. This is on web.dev. So if anyone is not familiar, there's this really great resource called web.dev. That's a domain. And that's pretty much, I think, the Google team. I think there are people who are like the Google developer advocates, and they are, if you ever hear terms like largest contentful paint or time to first byte, things like that, those are the core web vitals. Sean talks about them frequently. He's very much an expert in them, and they are always shifting and changing and being like re-optimized and which ones they focus on can sometimes shift. So it's always good to stay up with what are the current best practices, because they really shift a lot, especially when it comes to performance. So they recommend things for each of the there's the web vitals and there's the core web vitals. The core web vitals are the really important ones. And these are ones like largest contentful paint, which is what is going to be the basically largest image or largest thing that needs to render on the screen. And so they're giving tips like ensure that whatever your largest contentful paint resource is, make sure that it's discoverable from the HTML source. So if you need to run some JavaScript that then fetches the thing, that then displays the thing, then that could be an issue. So there's lots of tips like that in here, and making sure you're saying like priority correctly, so things are fetching in the correct order, and then things like using a CDN to optimize your documents. So a CDN like Edgeo maybe would be a good choice. So yeah, anyone else seen this article? They also recommend things for cumulative layout shifts. This is a really common one. I think that most people who surf the web frequently will notice that you'll open a page and then you'll go to click something, and a split second before you land on it, everything on the page moves, and you click an ad instead or something like that. That happens to me constantly. It's so frustrating. So they recommend setting the explicit size on any content. That way, when the page loads, the places that things will already be understood by the browser. What else we got here? Avoid animations and transitions that use layout-inducing CSS properties. So try and avoid messing with the layout if you don't need to. And then breaking up long tasks, a general optimization strategy. And then the big one, avoid unnecessary JavaScript. This is where the web component frameworks are looking to make a big impact. And then avoid large rendering updates. That's where things like Solid can come in and give you a lot better rendering performance versus something like React. So yeah, there's a lot of good advice here, both very technical, but also very practical and like just do this kind of instructions. which is great because there's so many ways to optimize our websites these days. So being given very clear kind of prescriptive advice can be very useful for developers.
Web.dev is an excellent resource. Yeah, they have.
Yeah. Absolutely. I threw that in there. Just go to pagespeed.web.dev or click at the link at the top there to see on the chat or in the, and you can just type in any website and get that page.
Yeah, when I go on there, I really feel like I'm missing a trick, several tricks, in fact, but I can't really get up to that level. I don't think I'm ready to read some of that stuff. Some of it's just nice. Oh my gosh, I need to take 10 more classes or get like my PhD before I start reading this. No, just joking. But some of the stuff like on streaming, especially like the web streaming, and I don't know whether I'm mixing this with MDN and web.dev, but there's definitely an overlap there. But when they start talking about streaming rendering, that gets really intense and really exciting for me in particular. But I started looking at it and then it got a little bit too confusing for me. So I need to do some remediation and then circle back on that. But yeah, those web.dev articles, they've got everything in there. Like it's really composable and generic in the sense that you could use it for anything. They have stuff for like payments, web payments, and streaming and performance, everything under the sun that's important to developers for not only the actual web platform, but mobile and different, I forgot what it's called, but when it's the hybrid between the two, when they have the blah, blah, blah. But yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a very important resource. Yes.
Yeah, I've had the same experience when I was first learning just core web vitals in general. That was so confusing. And I was like, why am I not smart enough for this kind of thing? But I think they don't make it particularly easy to understand. I think they picked like terms that technically make sense when you sit down and have them explained to them, but when you actually hear them like spoken aloud, they can be very confusing. And then they made acronyms out of those confusing terms. So it's no wonder no one understands how this is working. They picked like really hard terms and then acronized them and then threw 10 of them at us at the same time. So yeah, I think it's probably their own fault that it's so confusing, and it's not necessarily because they're so much smarter than everyone. It's because maybe didn't pick the best way to communicate the ideas.
I forgot her name, but the Google manager, I don't know if she's still there now, but she wrote a book, Sarah, is it Ito? Sarah Ito? Sarah something. Anyway, she made a real good point about how it's important for people who are making frameworks and libraries and tools and things like that to try and strike the balance between going down, having all this information dropped on them and they're just like awash in the sea of information. She actually phrased it much better than I could. I need to just read it so many times until I memorize everything she said. I have to buy her book too, based on what she said there. It was like the smartest piece of tech advice I think I've ever read. Anyway, but she was saying, strike a balance between not having, if a user is like looking at documentation or looking at an article or using a library or using a tool or framework, striking the balance between not having to go into a rabbit hole to figure something out or being just awash in a sea of information that they have to wade through, but being able to lead them in a way where it's not done all for them. They have access to the underlying capabilities, so it's not like brittle, like they have to only go the happy path designated for them. And if they want to go anywhere outside that, it's like it breaks. It like doesn't work. So I don't know. I'll have to dig up I made some screenshots of it, but I think she made some really good points recently. It was about a week ago, I think, when she did a little post thread there.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for sharing that, man. It's funny. Speaking of core web vitals, I actually wrote out an email sequence about core web vitals, but I told it from the perspective of kind of like a silly story, and I call it the Google slap. And Google's done this many times over the years for businesses, websites, people utilizing and trying to have search engine optimization. Because UVs, core web vitals is a big piece of that, obtaining ranking on the first page and whatnot, where a majority of clicks are being had. But anyway, so yeah, it was just like a comical thing talking about Google bots and how they began crawling the web and searching for websites whose core web vitals were deteriorating, and Google would penalize them by slapping them with a Google penalty. Go and explaining Google penalties and all these other things. But I should put that as a blog post.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why this is so consequential, and why I think a lot of people, they'll find themselves sitting down and staring at all these terms and being like, I need to learn this because I'm going to get the Google slap. I don't understand any of it. It's a tough position to be in.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's why it's good to know these things, that or be partnered with a company that at least knows how to help you with these things too. So if not, have the team to do it. So it's exciting that we have the ability to have people that know how to do that.
We have the technology.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Google's always changing things. The algos are always changing. It's just not perfect, but they give you, at least they're trying to give us the answers.
What if one day they decide that the web's actually going too fast and that we all need to slow down?
Yeah, like, no, we need to bring 56K back. Get some dial up in here. Oh, man. Yeah. I remember those days. All right, what about...
We're at the halfway mark. If you want to give us a station break.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us. This is not a recording. This is me live right now. Yeah, you're listening to me. This is Wednesday. Yep. January 18th, 2023. We do this every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're new or if you've been here coming here many times, we love everybody. Don't matter who you are. Thank you so much for showing up. And if you're a beginner, or maybe even you're a seasoned developer, doesn't matter. We want to hear from everybody. Yes, everybody. In fact, actually, that's where the most value comes from typically in these things, is when you guys are participating and having some fun with us. So if you have opinions, questions, facts, statements, whatever that has to do with JavaScript and or web development related, please feel free to request. We'll bring you up. We'll have a good time. It'll be fun. Hey, look at that. Show was requested. We'll bring you up here in just a second. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us today. And by the way, if you get any value from anybody out here up on stage or wherever, feel free to click on their face there, follow them, because I guarantee you're probably going to get value from them in other places as well, and not just here. And hey, you know what? If you haven't followed JavaScript Jam yet, hey, give us a click and do that too. We would love one. Also, we have this awesome newsletter that we put out every week, and Anthony has been mastering that thing for the last couple of weeks now for us. Like, seriously. There's some awesome value in there. And that's kind of what we're going over today, is the latest iteration version of the newsletter there.
Yeah, I'm throwing in also some podcasts. If you're someone who likes listening to podcasts, I am someone who is obsessed with podcasts. So I'm giving you a weekly rundown of interesting podcasts to listen to, which I think that if you do have the time to sit down and listen to these, I know it can be a bit time consuming. They'll really give you an edge, I think, over others in your profession, because not a lot of people will take the time to sit down and listen to like long form conversations from like leaders in the industry.
That's awesome. Yeah. So if you don't have time to read a book, maybe you have time to listen to a podcast and get a leg up on the industry, especially nowadays with everything that's happening in the tech industry and all the different companies, layoffs, whatnot. This is one way to put yourself ahead of everybody else and stay ahead of the game. Right. So yeah, if you want to be and have that resource, go to javascriptjam.com and sign up for our newsletter. Why not? Don't miss out. All right. Thank y'all so much. Back to it.
Looks like we've got someone joined us up here.
Carol, what's up?
Carol, how you doing?
Hello everyone. I'm a beginner, and I have a 1 million questions. I will start with the one that came to my mind today when I was doing some options to build the project. What do you think? Should I learn and build a project with Next.js 13, or should I start learning first 12? Because I've heard that can change a lot of things. So should I start 13 or first go through previous versions?
Yeah, really good question. Say first off, there's changes in 13 that you won't necessarily need to worry about if you're using 13. So I would say anytime you're learning anything, it's always good to go with whatever the current version is, unless they're like this is the quote unquote current version. It's actually like a beta version that's like way in the future with a bunch of stuff that's broken. For in this case, Next 13 is something that you're good to use, and to basically think of it as like the current Next. But there's something called the app folder, which is still experimental and different. So I would recommend using Next 13, but don't go down the like app folder route. You're going to want to use the pages folder. And if you don't know what any of that is yet, like you'll learn that as you go through the docs. But the main thing is you can use Next 13 and write your code as if it was an older version of Next. And then you'll be able to upgrade to the newer stuff when you want, but you won't necessarily have to worry about it as you're learning it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was doing some research. I've learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React. I would say basics because I'm waiting for a course that is coming out in the summer from Jonas from Udemy. I bought a few courses from Alexander Schwarzmüller or some, I don't remember his name, from other people as well. I was going through the courses and I've noticed that I don't like them so much. I like Jonas' course, so I'm waiting to do the course from Jonas. Next 13, that's on all of the courses that I have bought or I was checking, a lot of them are doing the older version. And I don't know how to say this. I don't want to learn something that I'm not going to use later.
Yeah, the majority of Next projects that you're going to encounter right now are going to be using the old stuff. So you're going to want to know how to do that because the Next 13 is like very new. It's like really, it's only been less than 6 months probably. And Next itself is over 5 years old. So you're definitely, and it's like the really new stuff is not so radically new that you need to rewire how you use Next or how you think about Next. It's more just how you structure your project that changes.
Great. Another question then. When you are starting projects with things like things, are you first trying to understand all of the structures and everything? Or you just basically know what is the purpose of what you are building, so that you are capable of building that with this technology, and you're just starting to build and you are learning during the building process, or how are you doing that?
I really don't think the first one is actually possible. I think certain people convince themselves that it might be, but really in practice, they end up learning it bit by bit while actually building something out because there's too many tools. They're too complicated. There's too much to know. You can't get a top-down understanding of something before you start. It's just not possible. We all arrive at the second thing you said, which is just building something and learning as you go. That's really what everyone has to do just because of how much stuff there is to know.
Yeah, that's a strange feeling when I'm trying to know what I want. I know that I can accomplish this with some technology, but it's like a little bit strange feeling that I'm going to build something and I'm learning it. I don't know how. It's like I will be building a house and learning it, and then later someone will be living in that house, and I will be worrying that something will be wrong.
Yeah, this is why you want to build your own house first before you build someone else's. So then you will suffer the consequences of your broken house first. So yeah,
Okay.
so do you have a personal project that you're kind of like working on, or do you have a thing that allows you to practice building with these tools? That's what I would recommend.
Yes, I would like to build something. That's the thing. I would like to build something that is actually useful. I don't like really the tutorials that are teaching you to learn something where you're using huge stacks and everything, and you're building simple to do app. That is strange.
Yeah, for me, just having a blog, like good test ground and playground for me to learn things and to continue expanding out. So I think that just having some website with some amount of content on it, a portfolio site, a blog, or something like that's always good, even if you don't have any ideas. But if you already have an idea, something you want to build that you're like passionate about, then build that. But I find some people don't even like know what to build. So in that case, I'm just like, I just build a blog.
And from about the React, as I said before, I'm not really happy with the courses that I bought. Is there any course or any learning path that you would recommend to beginner?
Yeah, it's always going to be hard to find like a course that's going to be comprehensive and that's going to be paced well for you and that's going to still be up to date. So I usually recommend people look for like current YouTube tutorials that are like a little bit not necessarily concise. You can find like an hour or 2 hour long tutorial on YouTube, but those will be at least if you're watching one within the last year, it'll be up to date. And then you can watch more of them and be exposed to more instructors. And then you don't have to worry about like finding that one instructor who explains things just the right way for you. But if you are looking for a course, I've heard Epic React by Ken C. Dodds is pretty good. I haven't gone through it myself. I would recommend checking out like Brad Traversy he'll have a 2-hour long React 101 video on YouTube. So Traversy Media, his stuff's really good. And yeah, I think React is something that there's going to be so many resources on. There's going to be more resources than you know what to do with. So I would say keep looking for stuff and see what you can find in like the free area. And then if you like really can't find anything that clicks for you, then you can try out some of the courses.
So basically, I think the best option will be to learn, like you said, some short, fresh course, and then try to build something by myself. Maybe reading the docs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're learning React, if you go to the regular React site, you're going to be seeing the old docs. You need to go to beta.react.org or beta.reactjs.org, I think. That's where the newest docs are. So that's like a trade secret not everyone knows.
Awesome. I went ahead and just created that list that you were speaking of and just threw some of the things together and commented, boom, there we go, on this space here. So there you go. There's some of the resources for React. Not everything showed up on that list for some reason, but let's see. Yeah. I put the YouTube channel link to Traversy Media, of course, Epic React for Kelsey Dodd's thing, and I thought I had just linked it in there, beta.reactjs.org, but I guess I missed it. I'll comment below it with it. But yeah, there you go.
Thanks.
Very good. So we can thank you for coming up, Carol, asking questions, man. Like I said, if you're a beginner like Carol here, or you're seasoned and experienced, it doesn't matter. We love to hear from everybody. So if you have an opinion, a fact, a question, a statement, whatever, we want to hear from you, because yeah, it just makes this that much more fun for everybody. And usually some really good conversations come out of it. So please feel free to request to come up. This is open mic. By the way, the newsletter, we have a great newsletter. You can go to javascriptjam.com, check it out, subscribe. And we were discussing some of the topics actually on this recent newsletter just a few moments ago. So maybe we should bring up a couple other things. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say a bit of a self-plug here, but two self-plugs here actually. So in the podcasts this week in the newsletter, we had a Redwood episode, which was pretty cool. I actually haven't listened to this one yet, but I know the person because they're on the Redwood team. So Amanda, she works at Okta and is the other like developer advocate type person on the team. So she joined B. Dougie, Brian Douglas, who a lot of you know, on Jamstack Radio to talk about Redwood. And funny enough, this is actually my second ever podcast appearance, was back in 2020. And I joined Jamstack Radio to talk about Redwood. This is pre 1.0. We're now on version 4, actually. And so if you want to hear, a more up-to-date interview of what's going on in the Redwood world, that'll be a really good way to learn about it. And then I also included the most recent JSJam episode. I think it's pretty relevant to a lot of the things we talk about here. We had Eduardo Bocas join us to talk about Netlify's edge functions. So we talk about the edge a lot here, and we are seeing more and more companies like Netlify and Vercel build specific edge primitives, and they're actually built, in this case, they're using Dino under the hood. So yeah, it was great to talk with Eduardo. He's someone who's like very deep in this tech, and yeah, we had a great conversation, so you can check that out.
Awesome.
Saw Theo jumped in real fast. Also, or J Dev, he is a great open source maintainer who I'm sponsoring actually. So people check out his work.
Sweet. We'll invite you to come and speak if you want to say a little something about what you've been up to, man. Let's hear it.
But yeah, so I would recommend,
feel free to plug away.
Check out those podcast interviews. And then there's a couple others in there. The React Roundup team gave their predictions for 2023. And then Lindsay, she's used to be the host of Views on Vue. She talked about Elm on PodRocket. She's a big Elm proponent. And then Swix, Sean Wang, talked about crossing the chasm, which is one of those like Gardner type terms. Do you know what crossing the chasm means, Scott?
Oh yeah,
So-
crossing the chasm for sure.
chasm.
Chasm, the something. I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
How would you describe it? I don't know if I really have a good definition.
Oh, we could ask ChatGPT to define it for us. That's my go-to now. I'm
What
like,
does it mean
let's
to
ask
cross the chasm?
ChatGPT. Yes, live right now on JavaScript Jam. We're gonna use
All right, it refers to the idea that there's a gap that exists between the early adopters of a new product and the majority of mainstream customers. There you go.
There you go. Thank you, ChatGPT.
So it's how do you get from me to someone who will pay you money?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you could use it in several different contexts, but definitely, that's so funny. ChatGPT is amazing. Oh man,
It really is.
I can't express it enough. Yep. Number 4 is coming out soon, though.
I just can't wait till it can do my taxes.
Yeah. I don't know. I might be concerned with that. I might slip something in there.
It's gonna be more likely to not make a mistake than me.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Awesome. But yeah, so you heard he was listing off all those podcasts that we have in our newsletter. So if you go to javascriptjam.com, you can subscribe there. Or, hey, you know what? You can also, we would love to subscribe, but you can also, when you're there, click on the top link, newsletter archive, and then you can click on the latest one, and that's where we're at right now talking about it. So all the links for all the podcasts should be in there. And I think what I'm going to do from now on actually is just grab all those links, and as soon as we start here, just like compile them into a tweet, throw them on there, so we have them. So give them just click there too. But yeah.
So those were the main things in the newsletter this week. I think the only other things that we didn't talk about was the state of JavaScript, which we talked about last week. So check out that episode if you want to hear all that. And then data binding in React by Josh Camo. And yeah, he's just someone who, anytime I see one of his articles going around, I usually assume it's going to be worth a share because he writes very thorough blog posts and has just a really good explanatory style talking about data binding, which is how do you bind data? How do you get inputs and selects and checkboxes and things like that to behave the way you want them to behave in React, which can be a bit complicated. Looks like we got Carol jumping back up here real quick. But yeah, so check that out. I highly recommend Josh's work on essentially anything. Great teacher, great content creator. Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
I have another question about ML Canvas, animations with Canvas. Would you consider that something that beginners should learn or no? And is those animations and Canvas stuff generally used in real projects or not?
That's a good question. I don't use it myself. I don't do very heavy animation work or graphic work or just kind of stuff on the design end. I usually think of there's like a spectrum from design all the way on one end and dev all the way on the other end, and people tend to fall somewhere along the middle. I'm very heavy on the dev end and very far away from the design end part. So I would think of it like that. Do you want to be more involved with the graphics? Do you want to have more fine-grained control over that? And then if that's the type of work you want to do, then it may be worth learning. If you're more concerned about doing like full stack apps, then understanding how like the database works and the whole data flow might be more important than learning Canvas necessarily. So it's partly, is this in the area of work that you want to be specialized in and you want to learn? Then it's like one of the more important things to learn. But if you're not as concerned with being a specialist in that part of the stack, then you could probably get away with not learning it right now. And maybe if it comes up on a project, then digging into it.
Yeah, great. I'm asking that question because during the learning process, I've seen many tutorials, and many, let's say, example websites, or where people are doing on YouTube reviews of some websites. They're reviewing websites where there's a lot of scroll animations and then some canvas animations and stuff like that. But generally, in the real projects, I'm not seeing that. So that's why I'm wondering if this is something widely used, or I can skip that and focus on some other stuff.
Yeah, I would say as a beginner, it's not the most important thing that you should be focusing on right now, especially if you're just still at the stage where you're trying to just learn React and that whole thing. And when people are like learning web development and they want to like really show off their skills, they'll create some of those more like flashy websites with animations and things that change when you scroll and stuff like that. And I gotta be honest, like I hate websites like that. I absolutely hate them. And I find that I am never ever on a website to have an aesthetic experience, and I think very few people ever are. So it can be good to show off your skills, but I think that it's actually a lot more important to understand things like accessibility. How do you know that all that animation and stuff is going to make any sense to a screen reader? I don't worry so much about all the flashy stuff. Like the flashy stuff is what some people go towards because they feel like they have to show off something flashy. But I think if you talk to like people who have actually been working in web dev for a while, they'll tell you that's not really the most important thing to learn.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking as well. When I'm going to any websites, what I care is accessibility and experience. I want to know, like, when I'm clicking something, I want to know what's happening. I want to have it easy and I don't know how to say accessible. Yeah, accessible, nice user experience, not a lot of clicks, scrolls, and stuff like that. So I was probably that's what I'm thinking. However, I was as well like watching those websites or portfolios, reviews, and there was a lot of animations, and I was like, okay, people are doing it, so maybe it is important.
So there's part of the challenge here is it's like, who is your portfolio for, and who are you trying to impress by showing it? If you're talking to someone who's like a technical hiring manager, then you can have a good conversation about this is my skills, this is what I can do, here's a thing that kind of shows those skills. Where it's just like a recruiter who is just going through and trying to figure out of this pool of like 100 people who's going to be the one that they're going to want to recommend, then that stuff might be more eye-catching towards a recruiter, even if it might not be like the best demonstration of like your abilities as like a technical architect or something like that. So like the flashy stuff can be nice to have, and there's definitely reasons to do it, but I think that you're going to be better served by learning like just how to make a website functional first.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for coming up, Carol, and asking that and spinning your opinion. It's always good to hear from people in the audience, whether you're a beginner or you've been in this forever. Come on up. Just request and we'll bring you up. I think, Anthony, were we going to go longer today, or are we sticking with?
Unless anyone else wants to come up and ask questions, we could probably start closing it out here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now's your time. The time is now. If you want to come up, join us right here on stage today, live on JavaScript Jam Live. Hit request. We'll bring you up. You can ask a question or state a fact or opinion, comment, question, whatever. We'd love to hear it. If not, then I think that's going to sum it up here for the most part for today. We discussed all the wonderful things in the newsletter. Thank you, Anthony, for putting that together. As always, if you want to check out Anthony's awesome newsletter that he's writing for JavaScript Jam, go to javascriptjam.com and subscribe. If you aren't subscribed, you're missing out. Oh, look at that. David's going to come up. David, how you doing, man? Been here for a minute. Glad you're in here. All right. Twitter. The delays. I swear this thing. There you go. David's up. What's up, man? You are muted, though. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
No worries.
I'm good. How are you doing, Scott? My question is kind of simple, and I think it. What do you think about React and TypeScript? Does it really have any advantage, or it's better off just going on with the normal JSX instead of using the TypeScript? Is there anything particular concerning TypeScript with React?
That's going to be a controversial question, but I would say it's like you're going to get the benefit of type safety. So if you want to have autocomplete when you're writing your code, if you want to get better error messages, if you want to have kind of more introspection into where things are going to break in your application, then TypeScript can be useful. So it's partly just, do you feel like TypeScript speeds you up or slows you down? And you can't really know that until you've started using it and learned a little bit of it. I would say it's probably worth learning at this point just because it's so common and you're going to see it in so many projects and so many other JavaScript developers are familiar with it. But you can also get along without it if you really want to. So yeah, it's partly just going to come down to personal preference, but then you'll also be on teams where your preference won't matter and you're just going to have to do it a certain way.
No, yeah. My reason for asking was I've worked with so many people and they loved some go with TypeScript, but I don't like TypeScript. So working on other people's projects is difficult. But I think I don't know. For me, I prefer to stay back with the normal JSX, work with the JSX. But for TypeScript, I find it so difficult to just wrap my head around it. Probably because I have to state types and other things. But I don't know. I think I'm still skeptical. Is it the future, or is it I should also go on with the normal React?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be the future in the sense that even if we end up moving off of TypeScript, we're probably going to build something TypeScript-like into the JavaScript language itself. So you might be able to wait it out and eventually not have to learn it, but there's really no telling how long it's going to be before we get to a place where we don't need it. It could be years, it could be 5 years. But I would recommend checking out Create T3 app. It's a meta framework that kind of sets you up with React and TypeScript out of the box and gives you good conventions. That kind of was what helped me get into TypeScript and not feel like it was like this huge burden to have to learn and have to add to my projects that I felt like already worked without it. So yeah, if you can find a framework that kind of configures the TypeScript for you, like Create T3 app, then that could be a really good place to be. Carol, do you have a question?
Oh, great. Thanks.
Another question. I would like to add something from the beginner perspective on a TypeScript. I've completed the TypeScript course from Cold Steel on Udemy. It's really short. It's 10 hours, I think. And as well, I have watched the latest Theo video on YouTube about how to use TypeScript or he said, don't use TypeScript. I think he called that video. And I was thinking this is really good advice to just start write JavaScript in TS files and add some types when you are building. This is how I found this really nice flow of learning.
You can adopt it incrementally and you can type things as you go and leave things untyped up until you want to type it. So that's something that's a really good call out, that from an untyped project to 100% typed project, like in one go, you can kind of do that incrementally where it makes sense. And then you can start to get some of the benefits of the typing without needing to necessarily go all in and have to figure out a whole type system for your entire project.
I went ahead and linked T3, create.t3 in there are comments. And it's linked at the top here if you want to click on it. Yeah, check it out. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming up, asking questions. Hopefully that answers everything. And I hope we delivered a lot of value to you guys today. I know we got a lot of value from you all just being here together and being able to have some good conversations about JavaScript and web development. Thank you all so much for joining us. Remember, we will be here every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please feel free to join us every week. We have quite a good following, and we love it when new people come and stick around. And Carol, what's up? One last question here.
Oh, finishing, just a quick question, because I watched another video on YouTube about from Web Dev Junkie. He was saying that he is not going to use probably REST anymore. He's going to use TRPC. What do you think about this? The beginners, TRPC or REST or both?
This is going back to Create T3 app. TRPC is in Create T3 app, so I would recommend, if you did want to go down that route, using, again, a meta framework that kind of makes it easy for you. And then he actually hopped out, but OrJ Dev, he is actually building a meta framework that's basically Create T3 app with Solid instead of React. But TRPC is still pretty new and is going to be very complicated for a beginner to wrap their mind around. So everyone needs to learn REST, like period. Like you can't really get away from it. So you're gonna have to learn REST first, and then TRPC is like a slightly nicer way to do what is basically REST anyway. So yeah, just learn REST, and then at a certain point, if you want to learn gRPC, you can learn gRPC. But it's like the bigger concepts that you need to understand is just what is an endpoint and what are puts and posts and gets and all that.
Great. Thank you for all your advices today.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Anytime.
Definitely, I will be joining more whenever I can. I love this format of allowing beginners asking questions. Really great.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming up. And I was a beginner not too long ago, so I understand the struggle and always happy to help out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carol, man. You've definitely made this live together here, this space, that much more better because you came up. So I appreciate you. Appreciate that. All right. If that's everybody, then I think we're going to call it good for today. Like I said before, if you found value from anybody speaking up here on stage, go ahead and click on their image there and follow them because I promise you will find value from them in other places on Twitter besides right here. And hey, we wouldn't mind a follow on JavaScript Jam as well. And I know I've said it many times, but I don't want you to miss out on the value there is in the newsletter we have. So don't miss out. Go to JavaScriptJam.com and subscribe if you're not already. Carol, I saw you subscribe. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. It's awesome. Follow Carol's lead, y'all. Awesome. All right. Love y'all. Thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next one. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much. Love y'all. See you next time.